Imagine you're booking a flight for your best friend's wedding. You find a seat for $412. You open a second tab to check the dates one more time. You close your laptop, make a coffee, come back 20 minutes later. $451. You've heard the trick. Clear your cookies. Use incognito mode. The airline is watching you. It knows you want this seat, and it's charging you for wanting it. So you do it. You open a private window. You search again. Same price, but there is a catch. The cookie trick doesn't work. Real tests have proven it. Again and again. And yet that fare really did just move $39 in 20 minutes. For no reason you did. Economists have a name for what actually happened. It's called yield management, and in its newest, most unsettling form, it's called individualized dynamic pricing. And the reason airlines can do this to you has almost nothing to do with your browser, and everything to do with a system built 40 years ago that was never designed to be fair. It was designed to be exactly this precise. Here's the part that surprises people. Airlines are not guessing what you'll pay. They built an entire scientific discipline to calculate it. It's called revenue management, the practice of selling the exact same seat to different people, on the same flight, for wildly different prices, based on nothing more than when you showed up and how badly the system thinks you need it. A coach seat next to you might have cost your neighbor $90 less or $400 more. Same plane, same seat pitch, same tiny bag of pretzels. This isn't a glitch. It's the most successful pricing invention in the history of American business, and it started with one airline trying to survive a price war it was losing. 1981. A tiny airline called People Express is doing something radical, flat, dirt cheap fares, no reservations, pay on the plane. It rockets from nothing to one of the fastest growing airlines in American history. American Airlines is watching this happen and losing passengers by the plane load. American's president at the time, Robert Crandall, doesn't cut fares across the board. That would bankrupt a full-service airline overnight. Instead, his team builds something no one had built before, a computer system that could look at every single seat on every single flight and decide, seat by seat, how many should be sold cheap to lure in a price-sensitive traveler, and how many should be held back, expensive, for the business traveler booking 2 days before departure who has no other choice. People Express could not compete with an opponent that could match its cheapest fares in exactly the seats where it needed to, while still charging full price everywhere else. Within a year, People Express was losing tens of millions of dollars a month. By 1986, it no longer existed as an independent airline. Crandall himself called this system the single most important technical development in the airline business since the government stopped controlling prices at all. Every other major airline watched this happen and understood immediately: adapt or lose customers to a competitor who can price the exact same seat 6 different ways depending on who's buying. Within a few years, yield management wasn't Americans' secret weapon anymore. It was the entire industry's operating system, and it didn't stay in the sky. The same logic: sell the perishable thing cheap early, expensive late, to whoever needs it most in the moment. Spread into hotel rooms, rental cars, and eventually concert tickets. Airlines didn't just invent a pricing trick. They invented the blueprint for how an entire generation of industries would learn to price everything you buy. Here's the twist economists actually respect about this system, at least in its original form. It wasn't designed to punish anyone. A seat that flies empty earns an airline exactly $0 forever. It cannot be put back in inventory and sold tomorrow. So the entire logic of yield management was built on one idea: sell the seats that would otherwise fly empty to someone who could never afford full fare, a family on vacation, a student, a retiree, while protecting a smaller number of seats for the business traveler who books last minute and whose company is paying anyway. In theory, that's a win for almost everyone. Cheaper fares for people who can shop around. Full fares only from people who have no other option. In practice, 4 decades later, it has evolved into a system so responsive, so granular, that a single seat's price can change more than 30 times before the plane ever leaves the gate, based on how fast the seats around it are selling, not based on anything about you personally. That distinction, based on the seat versus based on you, is about to become the most contested question in the airline industry. For 40 years, dynamic pricing looked at the seat. In the summer of 2025, one of America's largest airlines told its own investors it was starting to look at the person. On a July 2025 earnings call, Delta's president described a new AI pricing tool built with a company called Fetcher as, in his words, a super analyst, finding the right price at the right time for the right customer. He called the early results amazingly favorable. And then he said something airlines almost never say out loud, that a tool this powerful could also be very dangerous if it's not controlled and it's not done correctly. Within days, 3 United States senators sent Delta a letter warning that individualized pricing could mean the airline pushing your fare toward your personal pain point, the maximum you, specifically, would tolerate before giving up. A few months later, a member of the House sent a separate letter raising the same concern. Delta's response was immediate and unambiguous. There is no fare product the airline has ever used, is testing, or plans to use that targets customers with individualized prices based on personal data. As far as Delta is concerned, the AI system is optimizing pricing the same way yield management always has, by demand and inventory, not by profiling you specifically. So, which version is true? The honest answer, right now, is we don't fully know. What we do know is that an airline told its own investors, on the record, that its pricing tool finds the right price for the right customer, and that phrase alone was enough to get lawmakers involved. And that uncertainty is exactly why regulators got involved. In July 2024, the Federal Trade Commission opened a formal investigation into what it called surveillance pricing, companies using your personal data, your location, even how long you hovered over the buy button, to set your price individually. 6 months later, in January 2025, the Commission's staff released preliminary findings. More than 250 businesses across groceries, apparel, and home goods were confirmed to be feeding personal data into individualized pricing models. Then the political landscape shifted. A new FTC chairman took office, and one of his first acts was canceling the public comment period on the very study his own staff had just published. As of the most recent reporting, the investigation sits in limbo. Not closed, not advancing, just paused, while members of Congress on both sides keep sending letters asking the agency to finish what it started. So let's settle the cookie question, because it deserves a real answer, not a shrug. One airline was even caught telling a customer, in writing, to clear his cookies to get a better price, and later called it a mistake by an individual employee, not company policy, stating flatly that its fares are not determined by cache data. So why does the price still seem to move when you look twice? Because the seat you were looking at is sold in a limited batch. When that batch runs out, to anyone, not just you, the price rises for the next batch. You didn't trigger it. The market did. Here's where this stops being a story about one glitchy website and becomes a story about the entire economics of flying. For some airlines, this isn't a side business anymore. It's the main one. Think about what that actually means. The headline fare you see isn't really the price of the seat. It's closer to a lure, a number engineered to be just low enough to win the search, with the real revenue built into everything you add afterward. This is the scale-up moment. What started as one airline trying to survive a price war in 1981 has become a global industry, where the sticker price and the real price are, by design, two different numbers. So, if your browser isn't the problem, and the fare is genuinely moving on its own, what can you actually control? 2 things: timing and flexibility. Those are the only levers that matter, because they're the only inputs the algorithm can't take away from you. First, use a fare tracker that watches the route for you. Google Flight's price history graph, or a dedicated fare alert tool, instead of manually researching, which does nothing but waste your time. Second, if your dates can move by even 2 or 3 days, check a full month view instead of one date. The spread between the cheapest and most expensive day on the same route can be dramatic. Third, stop clearing your cookies. It has no effect, and the 20 minutes you spend doing it could be spent setting a price alert that actually works. Fourth, separate the base fare from the extras deliberately. If ancillary fees are now the real profit center, the airline advertising the lowest headline price isn't necessarily offering the cheapest total trip. Price out your actual itinerary bag, seat, everything you'll really need before comparing two airlines on sticker price alone. None of this requires a subscription or a hack. It requires understanding that the system rewards patience and flexibility and extracts the most from urgency, rigidity, and comparing the wrong number. Robert Crandall built a machine to make sure no seat ever flew empty. 40 years later, that machine has grown so sophisticated it can consider changing its answer for every single person who asks. Whether it's already doing that or just building toward it, is genuinely still being fought over in Congress, in regulatory filings, in earnings calls, where airline executives choose their words with visible caution. But here's what doesn't change no matter how that fight ends. The fare you're shown is not a fixed, honest number handed down from nowhere. It's the output of a system optimizing for exactly one thing: how much you, or someone statistically like you, are willing to pay before you walk away. Understanding that doesn't just make you a smarter shopper. It changes how you read every price tag you'll ever see again, because if airlines can do this to a plane ticket, the only real question left is, who else already is? The next time a fare jumps while you're mid-search, you won't reach for incognito mode out of superstition. You'll know exactly what actually happened. A batch of seats sold out, the algorithm moved to the next tier, and nothing about you personally triggered it. That's not a small shift. It's the difference between feeling powerless against a system and understanding precisely how it works well enough to work around it.